Another lunchtime news on BBC One with Shaun Ley.
Good afternoon. The Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, has said she sympathises with people who face long delays trying to get across the Channel from Dover this weekend. She rejected any suggestion Brexit is to blame. Ms Braverman insisted the responsibility for delays lies with transport companies and port authorities at what is a busy time of year. Extra ferries were laid on overnight in Dover to try to clear the backlog, which led to some coach passengers facing waits of 14 hours. Our correspondent Simon Jones is at the port.
Day 3 of the delays at Dover, and once again it's coach passengers who are bearing the brunt of the problems. This group is trying to get to Luxembourg for a short break, but before that, it's going to be a long wait.
Once we arrive at the port, it will take 4 hours to clear customs and then get on the ferry. So we're looking at 10 hours. I've got mostly elderly passengers on that paid good money for a holiday, and basically I think some of them now want to go home.
The problem is we've got one driver, so I don't think we're going to get where we're going tonight. I don't really know what we're going to do.
How are you feeling?
Unhappy. It's supposed to be my birthday week celebration. Not off to the best of starts, but hey, what can you do?
Those who have made it onto ferries are still concerned about their onward journeys.
Our drivers will run out of driving hours because they have also been up all night. So our tour company, Select Ski, are having to organise for a driver to come and meet us so that they can take us now to the resort to start the kids' ski trip a day late.
Extra ferries were laid on overnight, and freight traffic and cars are getting through without any major hold-ups. The government says the ongoing issue with coaches is a matter for the ferry companies.
They've seen an acute pressure of bookings, of coaches and journeys across the Channel. It is a very busy time of year. There's been some bad weather, but they've been putting on extra journeys overnight. They are positive that this will be eased very soon.
But the port itself says French immigration checks following Brexit have been an issue. It says it's deeply frustrated by this weekend's problems. Well, the Port of Dover had been hoping that by now the backlog would have been fully cleared, but that hasn't happened. Coaches still proving to be the big issue. Those arriving now are facing a 4-hour wait, but coaches are having to wait another 4 hours before actually being allowed into the port. And looking ahead, there's some real concern about next weekend when we're expecting similar levels of traffic once again here at the Port of Dover.
Simon Jones, thank you very much. The Home Secretary has insisted that asylum seekers who've arrived in the UK will be safe in Rwanda if they're sent there as part of the government's new migration policy. It remains unclear exactly when the scheme will be up and running. Opposition parties have criticised the cost and feasibility of the plans. Well, our political correspondent David Wallace-Lockhart joins me. David, this has been much heralded, but we still don't have a timetable for when it'll be introduced.
No, the Home Secretary is very keen to see some flights taking off. Of course, part of the government's key migration policy to have some asylum seekers relocated to Rwanda. It's tied up in legal challenges at the moment. Now, Suella Braverman, the Home Secretary, was on the Laura Kuenssberg on Sunday programme this morning and was asked about a 2018 incident in Rwanda where some refugees who were protesting were fired upon with live rounds. It resulted in 12 deaths. Now, the Home Secretary wasn't aware of this particular incident, but she did insist that Rwanda is safe.
The High Court, senior expert judges have looked into the detail of our arrangement with Rwanda and found it to be a safe country and found our arrangements to be lawful.
Now, Labour are critical of this policy, choosing not really to focus on the ethics of it all, but talk about the fact they think it's unworkable and costly. The Shadow Levelling Up Secretary, Lisa Nandy, was on the same programme this morning, and she pointed out the Conservatives have been in government for 13 years. She thinks that there are problems with asylum and small boats. They have to take responsibility for that, and she took aim at Suella Braverman.
She complains about an asylum system that's broken. I think she really does need to ask who broke it, and the answer to that lies by looking in a mirror.
Criticism too coming from the Liberal Democrats, who have called the Rwanda scheme today botched and unworkable, and they say it will do nothing to stop small boat crossings in the Channel.
David, thanks very much. The BBC has been told there are positive updates in the case of 3 British men arrested by the Taliban in Afghanistan. The government said it had been in negotiations following the news of their detention. Yotunde Yusuf has more.
Back under Taliban control since the summer of 2021. Now it's emerged that 3 British men have been held in custody by the Taliban in Afghanistan.
So maybe I might be evacuated tonight, maybe next week, maybe a month.
It's understood one of them is Miles Routledge, who was evacuated from the country during the final days of the occupation in 2021. He's gained a social media following, visiting countries deemed dangerous by the authorities. 2 other British men were also arrested. Kevin Cornwall, a 53-year-old charity worker and paramedic, and another British man who hasn't been named. In the last few hours, the organisation supporting the families of the 2 men told us there have been some developments.
We have had confirmation that the 2 detained Britons are in good health, and we have further positive events to hopefully relay very shortly. And we believe this is a strong indicator that we're moving towards a situation of resolution, hopefully.
Meanwhile, the Home Secretary says people should be cautious about travelling to dangerous countries.
If there are risks to people's safety, if they're a British citizen abroad, then the UK government is going to do whatever it takes to ensure that they're safe.
Updates on the men are expected in the next 24 to 48 hours. Yetunde Yusuf, BBC News.
School bosses who run more than 200 academies in England say Ofsted must rethink how it carries out their inspection. They've told the BBC the regulator often fails to take into account the effect of the pandemic on schools serving poorer areas. Their concern follows the death of a head teacher who took her own life after her school was downgraded. Our education editor Branwen Jeffries reports.
Music is important at this London primary school, but 2 Ofsted inspections in the last year have struck a note of discord.
It's been a year like no other.
On a visit a year ago, inspectors raised concerns. They'd heard racist, sexist and homophobic language in the playground and wanted better record keeping on child safety. The head teacher was told the school would go from good to inadequate.
I went walking for about 5 hours before I could find the strength to return home and face people again.
It was 5 months until the report was published in September.
I had lost my confidence. You have to be seen to be resilient and strong and confident. But internally, every essence of your being has been eroded.
2 months after that first report, different inspectors were back. The school had made a few changes. At the end of term, it was judged good again. Ofsted has a legal duty to inspect all state schools, checking that children are safe, happy and get the education they need. I've been speaking to people who between them run hundreds of schools across England. They share similar concerns about Ofsted. They told me the way inspections are carried out is too rigid, and that one grade that is awarded at the end doesn't give parents the full picture of what's going on. This Nottingham school is part of a group of 38 academies. The chief executive says Ofsted isn't taking account of the impact of the pandemic, and many others share his view.
I think that there is an issue, particularly for disadvantaged communities and schools that serve disadvantaged communities, how fair their experience is when Ofsted are looking for things that are becoming increasingly challenging for any school to deliver.
Ofsted said it recognised the challenges schools face, adding there is a legitimate debate about how schools are graded. Branwen Jeffries, BBC News.
Pope Francis has presided over Palm Sunday Mass at the Vatican just a day after leaving hospital where he was treated for bronchitis. The Pope, who's 86, appeared before tens of thousands of worshippers at the open-air service in St Peter's Square. He addressed them in person and thanked people for their support before touring the square. The reigning Formula One champion Max Verstappen has won a chaotic and controversial Australian Grand Prix. It finished under a safety car after a crash-affected restart. Mercedes' Lewis Hamilton came second. It was his first podium of the season, with Aston Martin's Fernando Alonso in third place. Those are the main stories this lunchtime. Our next news on BBC One is at 5:35. For now, from everybody on the lunchtime team and from me, goodbye.